So welcome everyone. Welcome to Mental Toughness class, day 3. And for those of you who do not know me, my name is Kim Guider. And the reason I go over my resume is the following. I mean, I am a college professor right now, and I love to talk about softball. And I will listen to anyone who I think has credibility. What is credibility? Credibility is your resume and what you have done. I want to listen to somebody who's had success, who has done this, who is somebody who has a track record of success. So just to let you all know my background, I was a Division I softball coach for 10 years at Florida International University. Multiple Division I Coach of the Year awards, top 25, especially when it comes to pitching. Every year we had somebody on the all-conference team. Every year we had a first or second team all-conference pitcher. So we were known for our pitching. Currently, I work with USA Elite Training Florida. We have our training facility down here, and I'm very proud of my students, as you can tell if you were on early and I was talking about them. With USA Elite Training, we have a center in Florida, and we have a center in Connecticut, which is the Connecticut Centers run by Coach Jen. Branching off from USA Elite Training, we have what's called Virtual Softball Academy, where we connect with students all over the country. So we've been doing this virtual thing long before quarantine. We've been helping students all over the country through video analysis, through our drills, through our instruction. We have clients all the way from Oregon to Arizona to Texas to New York to all over. So we are good at this virtual thing. We've been doing it for a long time and had a track record of success. To let you know about some of my students, we've had students go on to Olympic gold medals, multiple Division I. I mean, probably, it's kind of dating me at this point, but probably a couple of hundred Division I pitchers at this point. Obviously, Division II, Division III, NAIA, junior college, we've sent them to everywhere. Virtual Softball Academy is our virtual arm, as you would say, and we have our local training facilities. Fasterballsports.com. For many of you, especially Coach Stephanie's, Coach Heidi's, and my students, you know what faster ball resistance bands are. Those are those lovely bands that you love to practice in. So that is the device that we use to get us stronger, to help promote proper mechanics, and it is the only softball-specific training device that will help you get stronger and produce better mechanics. But today we are talking about mental toughness. And when it comes down to mental toughness, let's talk about where we've been. If you weren't here for Class 1 and Class 2, quick recap. Class 1, we talked about having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Basically, we want to talk about the fact you've got to believe you can get better. You are all here because you feel that your mental game can be better. The first thing you have to decide, and this was day 1, is you had to believe you could get better. If you believe you could get better, we can help you, because this is like any other muscle. You can work it out and you can make it better. But if you don't feel you can get better, it's not going to happen. You believe it, it can happen. I have this favorite quote: if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So day 1 was about you have to believe you can grow and you have to believe you can learn. Day 2, we talked about being a jungle tiger last week. Being a jungle tiger meant softball is hard. I joke with this with my students all the time. Being a softball pitcher is hard. You must learn to thrive in adversity. So it's like the idea of a zoo tiger versus a jungle tiger. The jungle tiger has it tougher, and the jungle tiger will learn more because they have to survive. They don't have a choice. Being in a zoo, it's clean, everything is handed to you. You don't learn as much as if you are in the jungle. When you're in the jungle, you have to do it. So in the jungle, we want to be that jungle tiger. Pitching is hard, it's messy, it's filled with failures. You have to learn to deal with that and get through it. Hang on a second. All right. So people are saying they're having a tough time seeing things. So can we all see my screen right now? Is everyone able to see my screen? All right. So if you can't see my screen or you can't hear me, well, if you can't hear me, it's not going to help for me to say anything. But hopefully everyone, give me a second, everyone. Let me chat to one of our students. So the PowerPoint is visible. So the PowerPoint you should be able to see, and pretty much everyone can hear me. So if you can't hear me, well, this isn't really helping, is it? If you can't see the PowerPoint, that's going to be a local problem. So please make sure you are checking your screen, because the PowerPoint is visible and the audio does seem to be working. So we talked about day 2, learning to be a jungle tiger, which is thrive at the edge of your comfort zone. The best learning takes place at the edge of your comfort zone. So you got to get comfortable being in the jungle. And that also meant, this was our challenge last week, to chase jungle tiger reps, meaning every rep you try and do it as best you can. You allow yourself to fail, but you come back from it, you bounce back, and you try again. You don't get discouraged from the failure, because in the jungle, there's failure. It's about survival, and sometimes it's messy. So last week, we talked about chasing those jungle tiger reps and about learning to thrive in adversity, because we don't want to be that zoo tiger. Zoo tigers do not perform well in games. All right, so our next topic today is what we can learn from LeBron James. Now, LeBron James, I don't really follow professional basketball. In fact, I don't like watching the NBA, but LeBron James is somebody I really, really admire, and for a lot of reasons. You never hear about him getting in trouble. You never hear anything bad about him. He just wins. And he didn't go to college. He came right out of high school, and all you've seen is him be successful. His hallmark is thriving under pressure. And somebody who came out of high school right into the NBA, I think that's freaking amazing. So how can we learn from LeBron James? Now, there's a lot of words on the screen right now, but this came after when he was, I think it was when he was with the Cavaliers, and it talked about how they came back from behind. And it said, the word everyone likes to use in sports is pressure, James said. I don't really get involved in it, but I guess in layman's terms, it's pressure. I think it's an opportunity to do something special. So it's his perception. He doesn't feel pressure. He feels that any kind of opportunity like that you and I might think is a pressure-filled environment, he sees it as an opportunity. And he says, yeah, it's something I am accustomed to. But you hate to continue putting yourself in these positions. But at the end of the day, this is what's important, everyone. It's just basketball, man. And that's what's going to give me comfort. And I'm more comfortable about it because it's just a game. I prepare myself. I'm going to go out and do my job and live with the results. Now, you see the part that I put in yellow. It's all about perception and how you view the situation. I mean, this man's making millions of dollars, and a missed shot can cost his team the championship. But he doesn't look at it that way. He looks at the situation as a challenge. He says, you know what? All I can do is prepare myself, and remembering it's a game. I prepare myself, I go out and do my job, and I live with the results. I think that is such a powerful statement. You have to be able to accept failure to get better. Everything that we've been talking about, the jungle tiger reps, you have to, if you're going to become a better mental player, if you want to improve your mental game and learn to thrive in big games, you have to accept that failure is part of getting better. And that right there is a powerful statement. Now, this is what made it even more impressive to me, is I looked into LeBron James' background. He was born in Akron, Ohio, to a 16-year-old mother who raised him on her own. When James was growing up, life was often a struggle for the family. As they moved from apartment to apartment in the seedier neighborhoods, that means not good area of Akron, while his mother, Gloria, struggled to find steady work. His father was Gloria's casual boyfriend with an extensive criminal record, so wasn't a good guy. Realizing that her son would be better off in a more stable family environment, Gloria allowed him to move in with the family of Frank Walker, a local football coach, who introduced LeBron to basketball when he was 9 years old. So not only did this young man become an NBA player right out of high school, but look at his life. And remember what he said earlier about it's just basketball. He realized and had his life in perspective. To him, finding food, having his mom be able to put food on the table. I think I read something about the fact they lived in a car for a while because they didn't have housing, that his everyday life in his younger life was so difficult that basketball is a pleasure. Basketball was his release. He put it in perspective that it was just about basketball. He had a life that was so challenging growing up that he realized that basketball is still a game. And to me, that made all of his accomplishments even more impressive. And here's my point to all of this. When we're talking about softball, we're all passionate about it. Everybody should have a passion. And if you're on this webinar today, one of your passions is softball. That's something, a passion is something that helps you get up in the morning, that gets you excited, that makes you smile and be happy when you talk about it. If you're on this webinar, you are passionate about softball. It's something we all love. It's something we love to play, but we need to keep some perspective. See that word in yellow, perspective. That means put it in terms of the grand scheme of things. You saw LeBron, who as a young kid did not have a stable life, and everything was a challenge. To him, though, basketball is still a game. So please, I love softball too. I love teaching it. I love playing it, but you got to keep some perspective that it's still a game. That is going to help your mental game. Now, for any of you who've heard me, you know I love this book. It's called Mind Gym by Gary Mack. And he has a great quote in this, and this is where we're going to get to today. And while we're talking about this idea of perspective, how do you get perspective? Well, one of the ways I think concretely you can do that, because some of this is great talk, but how do I actually do it? And what we're saying is here, while you can't control what happens, you can control how you respond to it. What do I mean by that? Hold on one second. Just people are chatting me. So what I'm talking about here is you can't control the umpire. One of the things that makes me nuts is when my pitchers complain about the umpire. They complain about the other team. They complain about the mound. They complain about the sun. They complain about the rain. Listen, you can't control certain things. And to be honest, both pitchers work under the same circumstances. But you can control how you respond to it. That's the difference. So it's not the situation, but it's how you respond to it that makes the difference. So that is going to be one of our challenges for today. And if you've never read the book Mind Gym, you can get it on your Kindle. If you have Amazon.com, and I know you all do, you can get this book, and it is a terrific read. Many of my college pitchers reread it every year because they pick up something different. One of my pitchers who went to Providence, she came home between semesters, and she had her pitching bag, and she pulled out Mind Gym, and the thing was dog-eared. It had rips in it. And she says, Coach Kim, I have it in my bag because every year I reread it. So what are we going to challenge you today? Everybody got that sheet of paper, right? Well, we all have self-defeating thoughts. And what we're going to talk about today is what they are. And to be better at your mental game, you have to find out what your challenges are. So what I want everyone to do right now, and you're not going to share this with everyone because everybody is unique and not everybody wants to share it with everybody. So what I want us all to think about is, what do you think impedes you, stops you from having a great performance in big games? If you're all here on this webinar, I know you practice. You practice, you go out on the practice mound, you go do your drills, but drills are different than the game. The great ones perform in a game. So what I want to do is challenge you all to do some self-reflection right now, and you're going to write it down because writing things down makes it more powerful. It gives it more energy. So I want you to answer the following question to yourself. And here's the question. Here are the gremlins. The gremlins are fear, anger, anxiety, self-confidence. Do you think you lack self-confidence? Perfectionism. What I mean by perfectionism, and I can think of a couple of my students who this applies to, perfectionism means it's more about being perfect than pitching well in the inning. You're never going to be perfect. And I think sometimes we lose perspective, as we were saying, and we lose that perspective and think it's about throwing the perfect pitch. All right, everyone, I think you've just realized that you can underline things. Do me a favor and don't underline. You've realized that, by the way, whoever underlined fear, next week we're talking about fear, by the way. Hold on that thought. So perfectionism. Do you try and be perfect more than you try and be a battler in the game? Stubbornness. Some people just want to do it their way. And that's more important than finding the right way to do it, that they're just stubborn and they're not going to change their habits. Lack of motivation. Do you feel that you lack motivation? You have a tough time practicing. You have a tough time getting out there on your own. I know some great pitchers who had that issue. Competitiveness. Now, you can take that one of two ways. You're either too competitive, which, to be honest, at times I will admit, anger was one of my issues, and I was overly competitive. As a coach and as a player, I was overly competitive. I lost perspective sometimes. Distractions. Are we easily distracted? I mean, that you have to answer yourself. Persistence. Persistence, I think, goes up there with some of the other ones. Persistence means that when you hit a roadblock, you quit. When you hit difficulty. Now, for some of us, remember, we talked about that jungle tiger. Persistence is being that jungle tiger. Where you have difficulty, you push through it. So I want us all to take a minute and write down one or more of these 10 gremlins and be honest about yourself. Now, somebody underlined fear. And I'm going to be honest, that's probably one of the most popular ones when it comes to the gremlins. And next mental toughness talk, we are going to talk about fear. Fear of failure, fear of disappointing people, fear of just not being good enough. So we are going to talk about fear and why it's number one on the gremlin hit parade. So some of my guests are already online. And first guest I want to talk to, Stephanie, can you unmute yourself there?
Hello.
Hey, Coach Steph. Coach Stephanie, I love this picture. This was back in the day where shorts were cool. Shorts were cool. Sleeveless shirts were cool. And high socks with a painted on stirrup were the thing, and one knee pad. That was Coach Stephanie was absolutely styling and profiling with this look. And Stephanie and I were talking about this the other day. And I asked Stephanie, you know, for her gremlins. And to be honest, I mean, this wasn't an egotistical thing. She was absolutely true. Coach Stephanie, when she was younger, had one of the best mental games I've ever seen. And Stephanie, I talked about this after you and I discussed it. And I honestly think the reason why you were so tough in games, I mean, you could see her face right there. Stephanie, I think you learned to compete from a very young age. And I think you really liked it. I mean, talk a little bit about the Little League experience when you and I first met and how you were playing at such a high level at such an early age, because I really think that was one of your superpowers.
Okay, so to go way, way back, even before I started windmill pitching, I was on a very good Little League team, and we had made it to the Eastern Regionals. And that was the first time, I was 12 years old, that was the first time I ever seen anybody pitch windmill. And all the games coming up to that, slingshot, I was throwing slingshot. Our team was awesome. We could score runs, but we just didn't have anybody that pitched windmill. We got to those Eastern Regionals. I saw those girls pitching, and I said, I need to do that. That is what I want to do. And then that a couple months later, I met you, Kim, and we started working. And then that next year, my team had gone back to the Eastern Regionals. We won states. We, went the whole route. And we went back to the Eastern Regionals with me, the only pitcher on the team throwing windmill, and we won. And we went to the Little League World Series. And I didn't have very much experience. I had less than a year under my belt, but I knew that was the difference between my team winning and losing. And I knew it was up to me to make sure that I got it done, because I was the only one that was going to get it done for them.
Now, I think
So
what I want to point out what Stephanie said. Number one, it was her choice. She saw, we talk about models, and last week we talked about finding models of things you want to do. Listen to what she just said. Number one, she went someplace, she saw some things, and she saw that she wanted to do it. Then she took the ownership herself to make herself better. And that brought, I mean, within 1 year, and I even forgot, Steph, that you didn't throw a windmill before that. So that makes it, to me, even more impressive. And that Little League World Series at such a young age, I mean, you competed at your age group, the highest level you could at such a young age.
yeah, it was quite the experience. And then that was the last year that we did the Little League. And then we hopped right into joining onto the Chargers. Pretty much that whole Little League team, we just put on Chargers jerseys and started playing travel ball. And we went to nationals, and it just went from there. But I got to see, and I feel like that first and second year we're doing that, you know, we were walking around the complex and saw some teams from California, you know, we're a bunch of rough girls from Long Island. We got our bandanas on, and we walk over to the field and we see these girls from California playing. And one young girl out there was Jenny Finch. We're all look at this girl, this tall blonde girl with her short shorts. We're like, oh man, look at this. And, you know, but she was, you know, we saw the level of competition that we wanted to strive to, and we just kept pushing from there.
And I mean, that is a terrific story. And knowing, many of you know Coach Stephanie, and I think it's very powerful to hear from people. And Julia is going to be my next person. So we were going to try and keep this to a half an hour because Julia's got a lot of homework because she goes to Yale. But I wanted you to understand what Coach Stephanie said, and the idea of going out and seeing something and being challenged by it. Stephanie was not threatened by Jenny Finch. She was impressed and challenged by it. She wasn't scared for the competition. She was challenged by it. And like I said, Stephanie is unique because many young kids would get threatened by that and be fearful of it. Just because you might have that fear right now doesn't mean you can't change. But what I'm saying is, this is an example of somebody who saw things as a challenge, like we talked about with LeBron James. Stephanie saw all big games as a challenge, and that's what you need to grow to. If you're not there right now, that's okay, because like anything else, it's like doing push-ups. It's like doing anything. You might not be good at it right away, but if you work on it, that's that jungle tiger mentality. You want to push yourselves to those reps at the edge of your comfort zone. So Stephanie, I'm going to take you off. And Julia, are you there? Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Julia. All right, Julia, are you there? Okay, this is Julia Grobman. And Julia is one, I mean, every one of my students is a favorite, but Julia is one of my favorites in this sense. I saw Julia in the last year and a half. Julia wasn't like a student like Stephanie. Oh, I had her since she was 12 years old. Julia came to me later on in life, and Julia was already a very accomplished pitcher. But one of the things that Julia could get better at was her mental game. And at the time, and I'm going to say this with love, I thought that was her weakest part, aside from the fact she got injured pitching. We had to rehab her. But I think Julia, while she was extremely talented as a pitcher, her mental game was not as strong as it could be. And why I'm really proud of Julia is because, by the way, Julia's at Yale right now, and she's doing her homework, so I don't want to keep her too long, and she's got all those online classes. But I asked Julia to open up a little bit about, because she's just gone through this, about somebody who maybe didn't have the best mental game, and how in the last year and a half, she's really grown into one of my strongest mental students, somebody that I use as a model and example for my younger students. Julia, you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I just think the most important thing that you focus on as a pitcher is that a lot of the times you are going to feel kind of alone in there. It is an island, but you are your biggest supporter in that aspect. And if you aren't confident in yourself and you don't believe that you can accomplish your goals, then it's going to be very difficult for you. I always struggled with being extremely negative and never thinking I could do it. I took myself out of like a lot of games that I could have finished. But it's honestly it's cliche, but like through your failures, you learn that you are going to be successful in the future.
And Julia is one of the best examples of this. And she's saying this. She was a freshman at Yale this year, and I saw somebody grow. She won a state title with American Heritage after coming back from injury. And I'm telling you, that state title that she won after she started the beginning of the year injured and she had to work her way back, that wasn't because she was a great pitcher. Julia's been a very good pitcher for a very long time. Why Julia was able to do what she did, and maybe Julia can talk to that a little bit, because there were failures, Julia, throughout that whole year, especially with the injury, and you had some bumps in the road. But what I'm so proud of you about is on the biggest stage, you pitched one of your biggest, best games of your life, didn't you?
Yeah, I think what helped me the most was understanding that I was not going to come back perfect. And it took a lot for me to learn that. It took many years. I always thought every performance had to be 0 runs, no hits, in order for me to feel like I did a good job. And it's all about being realistic with yourself. You're not going to have the best game every single game. You're going to give up runs because it's part of the game. But I think that going into states, I was so nervous. I wanted to win so bad, but then I kind of just got out there and was like, whatever happens, happens. I'm here. I tried my best. I'm going to do the best I can. And once I stopped like putting pressure on myself, that's when I started to do well.
Now, all of you, I did not tell her to say any of this. She didn't even really know the question I was going to ask her today. So everything that she's saying is from the heart. And the same thing from Stephanie, because these are pitchers who have been through it and they want to help others because somebody helped them. Allie, do me a favor, and whoever Allie is, please mute your mic for me. So please remember that I'm bringing in these other guests, and Julia, like I said, is one of my all-stars when it comes to mental training, and somebody who built up her mental game, and somebody who maybe felt like her mental game wasn't strong, but she was able to improve it. That's that growth mindset we talked about. That's that chasing that jungle tiger and learning. I love what Julia just said. She learned that she was going to have to be okay not being perfect and trust what she had. And I'll tell you though, Julia is taking away, she didn't mention one thing. Julia is one of the hardest workers I've seen in the last few years. This is somebody who, when she comes to lessons, she shows up a half an hour early to an hour lesson. And she's running through every single drill and working for perfection in the drill even before we start. So where she gets into the game and says she trusts herself and lets it happen, that's because she's put in so many reps and worked so hard in preparation. It's like studying for a test. Julia has learned, she's so smart academically, she's learned to apply that to her softball. She prepares so well that when she gets to the game, she knows she's prepared and her mental game is prepared, and she just lets it happen. Julia, do you have anything you want to add before you go back to your homework?
I think like one thing that's not always about your like your mental game is focus on the small things before you get to the big things. Like drills are so important. They are so important. That's what I've learned like coming into college. Like a lot of people in college don't do drills, and that's what I've like learned that is like key for me to perform successfully.
Julia, thank you for your time. And I really appreciate you and Stephanie opening up, because it's hard to talk about your own struggles. But, you know, this to me is a community of pitchers. And I know that, Julia, you've been an inspiration to a lot of our young pitchers at USA Elite Training. I know, Stephanie, you're an inspiration to your clients because you've done it. And we need to help those younger pitchers, because that fear thing that people underline, there is a big fear. A lot of the same type of people get into pitching, people who like competing, people who like being out in the center of the mound. And being a pitcher means you are the one who gets the loss. It is obvious who threw the pitch that caused the home run or walked a run in. I remember walking in the winning run. We've all had those failures, but you know what? It's about those failures that make you better, because that failure is temporary, and the best way to learn is through mistakes and getting better. And that's why Stephanie, one of the best big game pitchers I have ever had, Julia, who is becoming one of those best big game pitchers, what I saw her do in states, now I wasn't there, but I heard about it. And to see somebody perform like that on the big stage, that's what it's all about. We want to prepare ourselves to pitch on the big stage, because you know what? It's not about lessons. It's not about the drills. We do all of that stuff because we want to pitch big in big games. Now, virtual lessons, last thing. So some of you are asking about the virtual lessons, and that should say to text down there. So before anybody tells me about my spelling, I did miss that. So anybody who would like to get involved with the virtual lessons, we've been doing it longer than everybody. Julia still sends me video. Oh, we probably shouldn't say that. Julia still sends me video now that she's in, past lessons because I can't see her. I have students all throughout college who still send me video, our virtual students. So please take advantage of the idea of the virtual lessons. We are all now in quarantine, so we know how to do this. So please take advantage of these virtual lessons and the things that we're doing, because you know what? During this time of quarantine, the best pitchers are going to continue to get better. Skylar, one of my young students, has hit her all-time high pitching speed of 52. Skylar's 12, I think. And she's hit her all-time high in quarantine. You know what? Because she's still working. I'm watching Destiny Lake, one of my other young pitchers. She's not as young as Skylar, but she's really improved her mechanics during quarantine. Maddie DeMoy is improving her mechanics. I see her throwing now, and I'm seeing some of the best form I've ever seen. Isa Vega, another one of my students, I've challenged her to improve her glove side, and she's really working on that. The other thing, those of you who have seen our bands, these bands are the bomb. So Coach Stephanie has challenged some of my students to work on band work. So we're going to be doing some exercises with the bands because Coach Stephanie's crew has challenged my group to, and that's Skylar in the middle there using the bands. Over on the right, I have Kalia, one of my top 9th grade students who's throwing over 60. They're working some drills with these bands. And I truly, truly believe these bands are the best softball-specific strength tool out there. You can do your drills. You can strengthen. Coach Stephanie on Strikeout Inc. has all of her students doing exercises in them. She is putting me to shame because I'm going to have my kids start doing that. And little Lyric here is, she might be 9 now. She was 8 in this video. Skylar's only 12. And Kalia is 15, I think. But I have college kids using these. I sent them off to some of my college friends. So please, if you're interested in these, please text it to me. Don't test it to me. That is my cell number. And yes, I did write test because I was working on a math test, and I probably had math test on the brain. So please, 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 if you're interested in those, please get in touch with me. Upcoming topics. So for those of us who are going to be involved with this going forward, all of our students, mental toughness. Today's assignment, please make sure that everybody's got their themselves muted because we can hear you. Make sure everybody's muted, and then we'll take some questions. But next topic, as somebody underlined for me, is how to overcome fear. Many of you are feeling that, oh my gosh, these pitchers are so tough, they don't have fear. That's not true. And anything like overcoming fear and thriving under pressure, you can get better at. So class number 4 is how to overcome fear and using that and thriving under pressure. Then we're going to have some future talks about loving your changeup, getting over yourself. And I'm not going to explain what Don't Think of the White Elephant is, but that's up there with loving your changeup. So I want to thank all of our guests today, Julia and Stephanie, for being part of this and really being honest and telling you some things that, maybe sometimes people are embarrassed to say that they weren't perfect, but they're doing that to help you get better because they want you to understand not everyone has a great mental game. And the idea is that we all can get better at this, and we all have our strengths. We all have our weaknesses, and we're all unique. And the idea today's lesson was write down your gremlin, and you're going to consciously work on getting better at it. So we are going to work next class on overcoming fear because that's the number one gremlin that everyone talks about. So we're going to work on that next time and how to thrive under pressure. So I look forward to seeing everyone on our next talk. I'm going to be available to answer any questions for the next 5 minutes. I'd like to thank Stephanie and Julia for being part of today. And everybody stay safe and make sure you're still washing your hands.